On this 100th day of President Trump's second term, it is time now to hear from the voters' voices. And at the ready, our panel of voters who span the political spectrum, they are here to share their thoughts on the administration so far. So from day one, President Trump took swift action to follow through on his campaign promises. We know that, immediately signing, and very publicly, too, over 140 executive orders along the way, covering everything from illegal immigration to education to the economy, cultural issues as well. And he overturned more than 100 orders enacted by former President Biden. If you'll remember, Biden had flipped Trump. So in actuality, Trump was like reversing 76 in his own first hours of the inauguration after that. That might have been some of his own that Biden had toyed with. The president has also signed 5 bills into law now, and they include the Laken-Riley Act, named after the Georgia nursing student murdered by an illegal immigrant last year. And he's also facing an unprecedented number of liberal lawfare lawsuits against his agenda. 17 nationwide injunctions and more than 200 lawsuits in just 100 days. The White House, however, is highlighting the progress.
Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history.
Now, President Trump and this administration here, the success is unprecedented. We beat Trump's first administration on border success. Border numbers are historic low.
Since January 20th, interest rates, mortgage rates are down, gasoline and energy prices are down. We are doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and deregulating.
So, what do the voters really think? I want to hear from our voters' voices now. Joining us today, Maria. We'll start the back row right now to the left. Maria, Bonnie, you can wave if you want. David, Vanessa, all Republican voters there. Andrew and Jay, both Democrats, and Mary Josephine and Dominic are here as independent representatives of their perspective. Great to see you all. So, Maria, I'm going to start with you just on what your expectations were and what the realities are now from what you're seeing with this president.
I think Trump has carried out our expectations for the most part. He's done 100 things for us as soon as he stepped foot into the office. He's carried out on a lot of his promises. I think the next 100 days are going to be very critical for us instead.
Oh, really? What do you want? What do you want to see?
I think we want to see better rates, the tariff situation to be settled. I think people just want everything that he's already given us. However, the prison system and the immigration system, I think everything that he's done has excelled beyond. I mean, we don't have anyone coming through the borders anymore. I think that was big for us.
Yeah. Jay, I'm going to talk with you now as a Democrat about your own expectations, too, for President Trump and what you particularly think you like and what you want to see more work on.
When I think about what I like, I want to be fair and say, yes, the consumer price index is down 1%, or 0.1. However, that masks the fact that food is up 0.4 and 0.5, depending on where we're looking at, and housing is up by 0.2. I think his style of governing that creates chaos, it's leading to destabilization within the global affairs, which is going to lead ultimately to issues within Homeland Security, issues within manufacturing, jobs, all of it.
So when you say destabilization, what exactly do you mean by that?
By that I mean the way that the U.S. has led for generations since World War II, it's not been by just us proudly beating our chest. We had a coalition, and we led as a team with others. We were just in the forefront. We have essentially gotten rid of all of our partners around the world, with the exception of Israel.
That's not true. That's not true. And we know that because we wouldn't be going to summits with this president and able to make tariff deals and all the rest, even with China. They're not considered a partner necessarily. We're not, we're not having a disillusion about that. But definitely we have more friends than you're giving the president credit for. But that's your perspective. And certainly, we've made better friends with Mexico as they put 10,000 troops on the border to help us out with our border crisis. So that's just an example. David, I want to come to you and just ask about the tone Because I tend to hear what you're saying, Jay. I hear it a lot about the tone and the rapid nature of the president. What is your take on it?
Yeah, as a black conservative, there is some concern. I respect President Trump's urgency. Americans are tired of bloated government, endless bureaucracy, but like we saw with Elon Musk at Twitter, there's a fine line between disruption and destruction. We need America to work better, but not broke what's necessarily still working.
Now, you started with black conservative, and the role, I mean, I can understand why you'd start there, because there were blacks on every spectrum, in every spectrum of voting, who went with Trump for different reasons.
Right.
But you started there. Why?
Well, that's the lens through which I, see this process. I think that we need smart strength, not just the shock and awe. I mean, he put himself in a bold position. Now I think it's just time for him to refine and push harder.
All right. Dominic, what do you think about that very issue?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he had to say. What I like most about Trump is that he's doing what he said he was going to do, whether you like or dislike his policies. I think in the past, a lot of politicians said what the crowd in front of them wanted to hear and then did what they wanted to do. This president is doing exactly what he said in rapid speed. He's definitely shaking up the market, which is obviously reflecting that. But I think it is strategic, and he has very smart people in his corner making these moves.
Well, and one thing that he's done, and Bonnie, I'll get a quick response from you, speaking of the markets, because they've been healthier in the last day or so, and we've seen that each week. They'll have some potholes, and then they'll come back, and today we're way above 40,000 on the Dow, for example. This is what the president said he would do. He would make course corrections and go. Do you think the American public is getting that perspective?
I do to a point. I think people are a little bit nervous at this point, but I think we have to give him time. We elected him because we wanted a change, we needed a change, and that's why he was elected into office, to make a difference. And I think, 100 days, he's done great things. He's scared a few people, but I think we need to give him a chance to follow through on his plan, because I do think he's got, like Dominic said, great people in his corner and, smart people, and he's a businessman. He's not a politician, and I think we have to give him a chance to go forward with his plan.
All right, let's get your reaction to this. In spite of whatever rough patches we may have seen, President Trump supporters are standing behind him. Take a look at the numbers on your screen. A new Fox poll shows only 4% of those supporters say they wish they had voted differently. That is a very high percentage of people who, maybe, Bonnie, are doing what you're saying, and that is let him cook. Let him do what he needs to do. Vanessa, I see you smiling.
Absolutely, let him cook. I mean, I'm more than content with what President Trump and his administration are doing. I think as an HR professional, he's been very thoughtful in hiring the right people, putting them in the right roles. And we're just taking a step back to watch things play out. Let him cook, like you said. I've been a registered Republican since 18, first-generation American. And we want to see the country a little bit more conservative in what we're doing so that we always put America first.
Well, I can't wait then to jump to cultural issues, and I'll double down with you. And Mary Josephine, I'll come to you next as an independent joining us today. Vanessa, what is the key cultural issue that you're watching for right now? Because you say you're conservative, so you want to see certain things happen, not just with the economy, but with how we live in this country.
For me, immigration. Remember, I shared first-generation American. My family's from Haiti. We came in the right way. So absolutely, we want our streets safer. We want the best immigrants coming in to help our country excel and amplify what we're doing. But there needs to be a process. It cannot be a free-for-all. And being right here in New York City, the mecca of the world, we need to make sure that's coming through a conservative lens where we protect our city and thrive.
Wow, I see a lot of nodding. Mary Josephine?
Well, I mean, it would be nice to look at going to church on Sunday as a normal thing like we used to do years ago. I mean, I feel like we've pulled away from doing things that are probably normal because it's looked down upon. You can go to school and it's really difficult to say, if you believe, let's say, something that the Bible says, and be forthcoming with it because you're afraid of what the person next to you is going to say. Like we've gone away from just doing things normally. We're putting too much emphasis in trans sports and DEI and the basic family structure isn't something that is applauded any longer. And I like the fact that Trump is trying to bring that to the forefront and make people feel comfortable again just supporting their views, whatever they are.
Yeah, and that faith-based nature is certainly something that I even see Democrats tapping into now, as they did their, I don't even know what you call it, the sing-along on the steps. You heard faith talked about and that whole, and you really didn't hear it on the campaign trail as much. So, Andrew, what is your take on where we are 100 days in?
You know, I was recently elected to like the student government of Fordham University, a Jesuit Catholic university, and
congratulations, by the way, young man.
Thank you.
Making his political dreams come true.
A little bit, but I'm concerned because, you know, at a school like this in an international city like New York, I don't just represent Americans, I represent international students, and 4 of my peers had their visas rescinded, and thank God all 4 of them have been reinstated. But I'm just shocked, and I've been in active communication with the administration of Fordham, and I've been shocked that there's been no discussion on why those visas were revoked. There was no collaboration between Fordham University or other universities, or many, or not, I wouldn't say all, but many universities on why these visas were revoked. And the fact that there was none of these students were involved in protests. None of these students, you know, they were stripped away from the right to study and put back. So I'm just a little bit concerned on the process, and if it's too much, you know, too much quick action with, you know, little recourse.
Well, let me point out that what you're talking about was that there was enough process involved such that those people could get redress, that they could go back and get their cases looked at. And I don't know if it works like a HIPAA situation, but they may never share with you personally outside of those individuals. The federal government likely will not open up its books to share with you why they had spoken with those 4 who you know. Protesting is free speech.
Yes.
What the students have been doing in other places, though, like Columbia, that is not protected speech. It is hate speech. Some of it has been violent. So those types of things, I don't think we need to ask the government why you would, you know, single out somebody like a Mahmoud Khalil to take a look at what he's been doing. But with those 4, it sounds like the process worked. But I hear your concerns. And you know, Dominic, I see you nodding. You're one of the independents. I want to know your thoughts on what Andrew has brought up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, over the last few years under the past administration, immigration was the border was an open border. Under this administration, they're going to be vetting everyone that came across and deporting who shouldn't be here. So I don't think it's outlandish or something surprising that maybe some visas are being taken away. And I'm happy they were given back, right? But I think there needs to be a vetting process, and there has to be a process in general, right?
You know what's important about what Dominic's bringing up too, and Bonnie, I'll get your thoughts on this. We didn't have that kind of vetting. They were overrun with people coming at the border. And I remember when I was there 2 years ago, there was not a process more than jumping in the water to help people who couldn't quite swim across the Rio Grande. I mean, you're not vetting at that time. You're trying to save lives. And that's what a lot of our border agents were tasked with, was just the day-to-day survivability of the decisions to come into our country illegally on a whole host of different ways. So what is your take on basically getting down to zero at this point and being able to vet and not being surprised maybe that there's some people in the country that they're a little hard to vet?
I mean, I think this is exactly what President Trump said he would do on day 1, is close the borders, and he essentially did that to make our lives safer. We're citizens. We're here to make it a better place for all of us. And I don't think I don't know. I mean, I think that we're here. We're born here. We've lived here, and other people are coming in, and there's a process. And all of us, we're all immigrants here. You know, all of our families came from somewhere else, but there's a way to do things, and we need to protect the people that are here.
All right, let's get to this. We hear a lot in the legacy media about the president's poor polling. I want to take a look at some of the insight into what could be driving that public opinion. A conservative media watchdog analyzed the network news nightly broadcasts from Inauguration Day until April 8th. You're already nodding at me, Mary Josephine, you know what's coming. It found 92% of coverage of the president and his administration was negative. Look at the screen. 92% of anything is a lie. Over that same time period in his first term, that number was 89%. So not too different from the first term, very high. Compare that to their coverage of former President Biden's first 100 days, 59% positive. Despite this, a new poll shows that when it comes to handling the nation's main problems, voters say they trust Trump over congressional Democrats by a 7-point margin. Jay, that sounds like a problem.
It is a problem. I think that there is not a single person that we can look to in the Democratic Party right now to say that that's our leader. However, with that being said, I think taking the one person who's there over a party is also quite dangerous because of some of the things that he's done. Taking away due process from folks is not okay. He's quick to call out when he feels like his rights are being infringed upon, and yet the Fifth Amendment says that every person, it doesn't specify citizens, it says every person shall have due process.
So we don't guarantee constitutional rights to certain illegal aliens, particularly when they are suspected of violent crimes, which is why we have a finalized deportation list. And it's pretty clear. And I think some of the cases that are public now, individuals were on that. So where are you seeing that due process? I mean, to even get to that point, they must have gone through process.
Due process. Okay, so let's look at President Trump as an example. We call him a felon because he has been convicted of felonies. Some of these folks, without the actual due process, do not technically qualify as illegal immigrants because they have never had their cases heard. Now,
well, wait,
with
how
that
did they
being
get
said,
here is the question.
That's fine. But, you know, there's, just like we say when someone is allegedly being accused of something, it's the same process, right? However they got here, due process is what gives them that status of being illegal or not. So without that process, you're essentially just taking up people off of the streets, giving them this without their actual process and deporting them. Now, am I saying some of these people should not have been deported? No.
Do we agree that if you come across our border in an illegal manner that you have committed your first crime?
I believe you are entitled to due process.
That is the difference that I often get between Democrats and Republicans. David, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to speak the facts. A lot of media likes to throw around lies and smoke. The truth is, immigration is Trump's strongest issue. People want a secure border. Now, we can argue about tone, his brassness, and how people feel about when he's carrying out these policies. They may be a little nervous, but the truth is people want a secure border. And you even seen Democrats, and you just seen Hakeem Jeffries say, let me be clear, Democrats want a strong border. So they even have to change their message to what the American people want.
Well, and what's interesting about that is then, and you pointed it out, Jay, it's such a big issue. You have to be unified enough in your party to pick somebody who represents you to carry the message. You are nodding, Andrew.
Yeah, I think a big failure with the Democratic Party in recent elections is, almost a calling to anoint a person. With 2016 clearing the field for Hillary, a similar thing to a lesser extent for Biden, and now with the most recent election with Kamala Harris. I think a lot of people in my party strongly believe that there should be a new legion of voices, and I hope that this kind of anointing or choosing doesn't happen next presidential primary. I believe that iron sharpens iron, and that the strongest candidate through debate ultimately comes on top. I mean, the last time that we had a truly open primary was, in my opinion, was in 2008. And look at what happened with Obama. I mean, he was hate him or love him, he was an extremely strong candidate. And I believe that, the only way that we're going to find the next party leader is through, a competition and a discussion of the ideas.
Wow. Well, while you are figuring all of that out, President Trump has had 100 days. and he's been moving along the lines of those things that he talked about. I mean, nearly every day he talked about tariffs, so nothing has really been a shocker. Let's take a big picture polling look here. And it doesn't look great for really anybody. A majority of voters say President Trump, Republicans and Democrats are all out of touch with certain concerns of most Americans. Democrats getting the worst of it, though, at 69%. So, Maria, moving ahead, you mentioned some of the areas that you'd like to see. Specifically, what do you want to see beginning the 101st day?
I think I'm going to go right back into the same focus of immigration as well, because of piggybacking off of what Vanessa spoke about. I'm also a child of an immigrant parent. Both my parents are immigrants, Indian and Pakistani. And a lot of the things that are going on overseas, I understand that being that I am Muslim. So I do understand that. However, my family worked very hard to be here and to live the American dream and to achieve that. And they had to go above and beyond to make sure that they could have that here. So to see others come into this country and do whatever they want, even with education, going to college, getting grants, getting scholarships, some of these things are just being handed out to other people.
You know, at one point we had thousands upon thousands of people coming across our border. There was no vetting process. And the Biden administration actually didn't fake it and say that there was at that point, because we didn't have that many people who could count it and vet them. I mean, they were outnumbered, to coin a term.
Yeah.
But Vanessa, when you talk about coming here the right way, I can understand the disconnect between Democrats and Republicans on this issue. But your family has lived it. You both of your families, Maria, too. So talk with us about what the next move you would like to see this administration, tackle, because that issue is going to continue to be one. He wins on this issue, but Democrats aren't going to lay down forever.
Absolutely. For me, it's continuing to deliver on truth, transparency, common sense. There's such an appetite in our country for that. I wanted to go back briefly on what you were sharing about legacy media. I mean, I think that's why we're seeing such a surge in Gen Z. They're kind of splitting. You're actually seeing a turn towards more conservatism, because you have independent media and podcasts, Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan, that are really speaking to the American public. We just want the truth. So that's the one ask that I have of President Trump. Promises made, promises kept. Continue to be transparent about that.
That's probably why, for some of you, his boldness, his rapid movement doesn't bother you, because you know what it takes to shake the apples out of the trees and make change. And if you're raising children, I have 2 teenagers, it's never simplistic. Even when parents give us the ideas of what to do next, it's like, well, it didn't work out that way for me with mine. So it takes time, and he's just not taking that time. He's throwing all the crayons at the wall. I want to just get 2 quick last thoughts. Dominic, I'll come to you.
Talking about the next 100 days, I think the tariffs need to be worked out. We saw during COVID, when the ports kind of shut down, what it did to our supply chain and cost of goods. I agree that he should do it. I agree that we shouldn't be just shoveling money to other countries and not be a fair agreement between us and other countries. But it could affect us in a serious way if this isn't resolved very quickly.
Are you watching some of the latest moves, the difference in tone and movement, maybe a little bit on a public scale?
Yeah.
With certain countries like China?
Yeah, I think. Listen, what he did had to be done. I just want him to wrap it up as quickly as we could, so we don't see too much economic change here in the country.
All right, David.
Yeah. The thing that I would like to see him work on, I think you just pointed it out about the Americans feeling like both parties is out of touch. And let me be clear, Americans have a distrust of institutions overall. So it's not an indictment on anyone. But like the famous strategist said, it's the economy, stupid. So you need to focus on the economy, getting back those 401ks and making sure people have those manufacturing jobs.
There you go. Jay, it'll make you happy. I think that was a Democrat who said that.
I think most of that is fair. Doing things too quickly works in some places, it doesn't work in others.
All right.
Firing people who are taking care of our nuclear silos, that doesn't work. So I want him to do what's best for Americans, period. And I'll leave that up to his team.
Well, you all are fantastic. And I want to thank you for coming and making your voices heard. Congratulations on taking office, young man. All parties considered today on Voters' Voices, so I'm glad and feel blessed to have you here in studio with me. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.